And away we go. It's the DFS Alert presented by Osmo.com, brought to you in part by SuperDraft. We'll talk about them momentarily. Dan Strafford, Dave Loughran, along with you on this Friday morning 10-game NBA slate. Laufey, how the hell you doing?
Better than the Rockets, man.
Jesus.
What do you think they're shooting from three? We're almost through three quarters. Just take a guess.
Yeah, I haven't looked. I will say 6 of 27.
2 for 29.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's just horrendous.
I think the word you use is putrid, right?
Putrid. Yeah, heinous, putrid. It's a live by the sword, die by the sword thing. Like, we saw this with the Rockets, even when they didn't shoot.
Sword has like 7 sides on it.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We saw this with them like in the postseason a couple of years ago, remember, where they should have won. They should have advanced. And they missed like 30 straight threes or something insane.
Right.
And I've been saying it about this team for a while now. Like, they are either going to run through teams or they're going to get beat up on by other good teams if they can limit them at the 3-point or beyond the arc. And we're seeing that at home against the Clippers today. I mean, 2 for 29, you got to just have some bad bounces as well. But dude, the thing is, they don't have anyone that can produce in the paint when they're not shooting well. Like, if they're not knocking down threes, they're not scoring. And we're seeing that today.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the lane they've taken here with the small ball lineup and thinking that they don't need a center or power forward who can in some way, shape, or form make some offense in the lane. And we'll see what comes to pass. History will decide how this team is viewed when all is said and done, whether or not they went a little bit too small, letting Capella walk. Obviously, Capella's injury matters a ton here as well. But we have 10 games on tap. I will point out that there are going to continue to be injury concerns throughout the rest of the NBA season. Luka Doncic sick, also dealing with that thumb issue. Anthony Davis will have a Q tag now through the end of his career. He's dealing with a sore knee. Scrolling through here quickly, Irving still out, Levine out. Ayton has a Q tag and is doubtful with an ankle issue for the Phoenix Suns. We're through 7,900. Jaylen Brown continues to be out. Gordon Hayward is definitely still out. Yes, he is out with a knee issue. So we can talk about Tatum a bit there. Let's see what else we got here. Tim Hardaway Jr. with a Q tag. He is questionable Friday's game with a left shoulder contusion. Evan Fournier has a Q tag. He is doubtful for Friday. So, Laufey, I can sort of scroll through and name all the names here. Mitchell Robinson, Q. Victor Oladipo has a Q tag. Jaren Jackson Jr. remains out. There's a lot to consider on a 10-game slate. Maybe not as much on the shorter slate when there was a ton on Thursday and Wednesday nights. But this is going to be the rest of the NBA season, right? Where we're just sort of up in the air until lock.
I would think we're going to see a lot of this, yeah. And a lot of it's not just because teams are out of it and teams are resting players, but also you start to wear down a little bit at this part of the year. You've played 65 games or whatever so far. You're coming into the home stretch and it's going to be difficult. I don't think Doncic plays. I watched that game. I had DFS purposes and some money on the Pels to cover that. And fortunately, God, they held on in overtime, but it started looking dicey. It was a good game. But if you watched it, Doncic the whole time in the fourth quarter was grabbing his thumb and he went up to the free throw line and actually took his thumb. And when you feel like you jammed it real bad, you stick it between your legs and like put pressure on it any way you can, right? Your brain's just telling you to alleviate that pain. You would see him putting it in between his legs and like squeezing on it and then shaking it. And this all sounds wrong. I'm talking about his thumb, but his thumb.
It's going to be fun cutting this up, though. I'm not
exactly right. That's what I'm saying. In between his legs and shaking it. I mean, that doesn't sound great.
Who hasn't been there on the basketball court before? Let's be honest.
But it's funny because this is an illness they're talking about.
Yep.
And he didn't practice on Thursday, but he was also dealing with that thumb. And he mentioned after the game that it was bothering him.
Yeah, so and it was going to be painful for the rest of the season, he said. Yep.
Exactly. Now, so I'm really just speculating here, but it does feel like an opportune time for them not to play Doncic. But like I said, it's just a guess and it's still early.
Yeah, I would agree with you there that if sick and the thumb, matchup with Memphis, who is struggling a bit over the past couple of weeks.
No, they were. Their last two games, they shit all over their opponents. It's insane. They beat the hell out of Atlanta. And then who did they smoke in back-to-back games? Who did they crush last time out?
My scoreboard slow in loading here.
Last game they beat up on Brooklyn. So they beat Atlanta.
Oh, that's right.
127-88. And then Brooklyn.
That was last night. They got on Wednesday night.
Both of them on the road, 118-79.
Yeah, the Nets got booed out of the Barclays Center.
And let me give you this. I was pissed about this because I got the Lakers laying 6 points. It moves to 11.5, or it moves to 12. And I'm like, oh my God, I just made the greatest bet ever. They end up losing by 18. So Memphis beat them 105-88. So yeah, their last three games, they've held opponents under 90 points. It's a very interesting dynamic right now. And I've pointed this out on the strategy show that surprised me quite a bit. The Memphis Grizzlies without Jaren Jackson are 5 points per 100 possessions better defensively, which was somewhat shocking.
All right. Well, good point there. Memphis, 2.5 games up on Portland and Sacramento for the 8th spot out west as they try to hold on their pace up spot, obviously for Dallas. So maybe a position to look at Kristaps Porzingis, though his price tag has risen, and only center eligible on DK. Obviously, he's been playing at the 5 and will continue to play at the 5, but only center eligible. So we'll talk about that as we get to that position. Don't forget, SuperDraft is where we are sponsored from. They are changing the game of DFS, Daily Fantasy Sports, by giving you the multiplier, no salaries, just simply building your dream team, building a lineup that is built off of the multiplier. Your James Hardens of the world have the 1.0x. Somebody who might be 75 or 8K on a site like DraftKings, they're 1.3. And then you keep building from there. You build your lineup as you see fit. The lineups build themselves to a certain extent, but you got to mix and match and see exactly what you can put together, get those multipliers going. And then, of course, they're continuing to grow their prize pools as well. So you'll want to check them out. Use the promo code AWESOMO, gets you $20 on your $100 deposit. We'll talk more about them later. Also talk a little bit about what Awesemo has going on for weekly offers after shooting guard. Dave, we start at point guard. You already talked about Doncic. He is point guard eligible only on DK. Seems like they're slimming down MPE a little bit on this slate over the past couple of games as well. So we have Doncic and Trae Young, Lillard, Russell, all as point guard eligible only. LeBron James has point guard, small forward. If we take Doncic out of the mix here, simply stating, I would agree, conjecture a little bit here, but saying he doesn't play. We can talk about him maybe towards the end about if he does suit up. Trae Young, Lillard, Russell, which of those three as the most expensive point guard only eligible players do you like the most?
Oh yeah, by the way, I'm very excited to see what form Steph Curry's in tonight. Should be a lot of fun. Obviously, it's late Thursday night.
58 games, is that right? I think he missed 58 games.
Is that what it was? Yeah, it makes sense. I think he played 4 or 5. But that game's set to tip off soon, and I'm very much looking forward to it. The Golden State team will at least be a little bit more watchable now. If Luka play, dude, I'm so confused by this Grizzlies team the last few games. I mean, I get that Atlanta and Brooklyn aren't exactly offensive juggernauts, but holding all three of them, including the Lakers, to under 88 or fewer points, it just seems like they may have figured something out, at least recently. And we'll see. They're blowing teams out. There's obviously a lot of unsustainable factors there as well, but Luka, he still triple-doubled yesterday. He got to overtime, which helps him a little bit, but I am a little bit worried at that price point, and I'm not sure if I want to get there. But if he plays, it's hard to really be that concerned. He just dropped 73 fantasy points with 30, 17, and 10. So, yeah, I guess it's an issue, but I don't know how much of an issue it is. Giannis is 11-2 against the Lakers. I really like him. We'll get to that in a minute. LeBron is 10-9 against Milwaukee. Beal is 10-4 against Atlanta. Jason Tatum is 10K against Utah. Trae Young against Washington is 9,900. So that's kind of and Damian Lillard 9,700 against Phoenix. So setting the table there to just show you how many good players there are in good spots. And, that brings you to a guy like Trae Young. It's hard not to like him here. Last game, brutal against Memphis. They completely shut him down. But now coming into this one against Washington, it's been an absolute sieve defensively. They're giving up everything at this point. It's at the point where Bradley Beal's dropping 30 plus points every night, and they're still just getting crushed. I mean, they beat Golden State, good for them, but that's about it. Gave up 129 to Utah, 133 in regulation to Sacramento, 125 to Portland, 137 to Milwaukee. That was an overtime game. 126 to Chicago. They've been getting smoked, and I just don't see how Trae Young can sit sub 10K here and not be one of our top options.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. The Wizards bottom in almost every defensive category, at least bottom 10, if not bottom 5, or the bottom team overall. Points allowed, 3-point attempts, 3-pointers made, I should say. So a prime spot for Trae Young. You mentioned the idea of Doncic at the top. Lillard has a matchup with Phoenix at 9,700. Then you have D'Angelo Russell sort of finding himself with this Minnesota Timberwolves team. Where else do you go top end of point guard? Are there other names here that stand out, or do you find yourself maybe finding a cheap option or two in the mid tier of the Rubios, Morants, and others of the world?
Yeah, I mean, so Devin Booker against Portland. We can talk about him at point guard. 8,400 is very interesting. Portland's another team defensively that really struggles. There's no reason to believe that. There's no reason at all to believe that Damian Lillard back is going to have any impact there whatsoever. Right. It's a pretty appealing spot for Booker. The issue I have is with so many great top tier players, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get to Lillard. To Booker. Lillard on the other side, I have interest in him too, but I like Trae Young more. And I also don't know if Lillard played 32 minutes in his first game back. He only shot 12 times, but again, first time back, they smoked Washington. That game was never really competitive. So the question here is he going to be completely off a minutes limit? And if that's the case, 38 minutes from Damian Lillard is always going to be appealing. So yeah, there is a lot at the top. When you get into the mid range, it thins out a little bit. Eric Bledsoe is a mid 5K price point on DraftKings now. That's pretty appealing. Markelle Fultz, not a guy I'm particularly fond of rostering on most nights, but 5,400 against a bad Minnesota defense. I do think this game stays close though, which is pretty important. He's also going to be a viable option here. And then once you get into some of these cheap guys, things begin to get a little bit interesting. I guess it just depends on how little do you respect Minnesota's defense, and especially given the pace of play that they're playing at is nuts. They're playing very fast. Does DJ Augustine play 25 minutes? You'd never play him alongside Fultz, but he's the dead min. Is that somebody that you'd be willing to roster at minimum salary, 25 or so minutes against the Minnesota Timberwolves? I think that's doable. It wouldn't surprise me in a game that has a 235 total, a massive pace up spot. TJ McConnell. Here's an interesting one, right? Let's talk about this, because TJ McConnell, when given the opportunity this season, has been pretty productive. And now you're looking at a situation where Malcolm Brogdon is unlikely to play.
Right.
Victor Oladipo is questionable, but how many minutes do we get out of McConnell? So Aaron Holiday has been wildly underwhelming in his opportunities here. McConnell played 30 minutes last game. And now, to be fair, you have to take into consideration how much of that game was competitive, right? And if we're taking a quick look here, you've got at one point it was tied up midway through that, or a few minutes into the second quarter. Okay, so it turned into a blowout late. TJ McConnell, his minutes, this is interesting, Dan. TJ McConnell got pulled during garbage time. During garbage time. So he played 4.5 in the first quarter, played 5.5 stint in the second, and then came back out for another 5. So he played 11 minutes almost in the second, 5 minutes in the third, and then another. So sorry, it's almost 8 minutes in the third. And then he played 7 minutes in the fourth. And then the starters got cleaned out. The bench was emptied for 5 minutes to close out that game. So McConnell was on pace to play a ton of minutes. And if that's the case, things could get really, really interesting. So we saw Brogdon go. Now, also keep in mind that Oladipo was out as well. So Oladipo was out, and then Brogdon got hurt in the second quarter, and TJ McConnell came back in for him. So I don't know what type of influence Brogdon's going to have there, or how much of those minutes are going to go to Holiday. But I do think that at his current price point, which is $4K against the Bulls, he's a pretty fascinating play in the event that Brogdon, who's doubtful, ends up sitting.
If you had to play San Antonio Spur point guard roulette, is there one that you'd prefer over the others?
Oh, man. Probably Bryn Forbes. Whoever's cheapest, really.
Yeah, Patty Mills and Bryn Forbes are both 3,400.
Yeah, I'd probably go Forbes. I'd give him a few extra minutes and hope that he could make it happen.
And not enough minutes right now for Jeff Teague to be viable against Washington, right? At 3,300, he's only playing 17 minutes. Is that enough to maybe have enough upside in that game?
No, it's not, especially because even though he gets a few minutes alongside Trae Young, what we've seen is in competitive games, Teague at times has played even less than that. So I don't know. I'll give him 17 minutes here, but that's not enough even against the Wizards.
All right, let's continue on to shooting guard, where we do have Bradley Beal in an obviously high-end matchup for him, but the price point has risen to 10-4 over the past couple of weeks. He was 9-7 back on the 28th, 10-4, 10-4, 10-6 against Portland. Now drops $200 to 10-4 against the Atlanta Hawks. You know, the usage is there, the minutes are there, the matchup is there. I think maybe some personal bias here, balking at 10-4 for Beal. Is he viable here for you on a slate where we have the likes of Giannis and LeBron and Trae Young and others at similar price points in pretty good matchups themselves?
What do you think here?
I think he is as high-end an option on this slate as anybody else. He's taking 20 to 25, maybe even 30 shots a game. Mm-hmm. He's taking multiple three-pointers, upwards of double digits. He's doing the peripheral stats just enough when it comes to steals and rebounds and assists. I think the floor is there and the ceiling is there. I don't know how much I will roster him if I was playing multiple lineups, but I think he has as much upside as anybody.
He hasn't attempted less than 20. He's in 10 straight games. Let me go back and actually check, because 10 straight games he's attempted at least 23 field goals. Think about that.
Yep.
That's nuts. So I agree with you. I absolutely agree that if he was this price tag in October and November, would you even consider rostering him?
No.
Right. I wouldn't either. You know, but we also didn't want to pay $10K early on for Trae Young, right?
Over those last 10 games, he's at 37.4% usage.
Wow. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 straight games with 23 plus field goal attempts. And the matchup doesn't get much better.
Right.
What's the total on this game?
I was going to ask you if you looked at it. Do you have a guess? Before?
Okay, I did. I just did. Did you see it?
Yeah.
245 and a half.
Yeah.
Wow.
Load them up.
Honestly, we've only gotten to a couple high-end players, and there's still a few more that I like, or a couple more that I like. But man, tell me you couldn't see yourself. Tell me you couldn't see, like, let's assume Brogdon's out, maybe Oladipo's out as well, and Oladipo and Brogdon are out, and McConnell ends up getting those minutes. Tell me you couldn't see legitimate ways to have Trae Young and Beal in the same lineup and both of them go for 60 plus. Like, it really wouldn't surprise me at all.
Not at all. And I think that's a legitimate approach to this slate. It's feels like a weird one where you pay up for point guard, shooting guard, and then try to find cheap options elsewhere. But I think this game has all the makings of a small game stack of Young, Beal, and then maybe one or two other pieces that have, the John Collins of the world, who's at 8,500. I think, and away we go, as one might say. I like Beal a lot here.
He's worth the price.
Ownership matters, right? Like, this is like, if you're seeing him in single digit ownership because similar bias for people for one reason or another, Giannis, LeBron, all at the same price point, he's single digit. I think you lock him up as much as you can.
And I think, again, this is going to be an instance where, like I'd said, it's just harder to get to guys like Lillard and harder to get to guys like Booker because you know how hard it's going to be to pull the trigger on them, even from a contrarian standpoint, when you have Beal and you have Trae Young, both at, I'd say at least Trae Young is a very reasonable price, but even Bradley Beal, you can't argue anymore that he's overpriced here with the way that he's played with the, like, would you say 37% usage over that span? It's insane.
Yeah, minutes and usage and matchup is all there. The mums, right?
That's right.
It's all right
there. Yeah, I'm with you, man. He's the top option at shooting guard. And the only issue I have is that it's very possible, depending on which injuries come to fruition or which, absences, that I guess you know where I'm going here, that the value is all going to be the same and that so many lineups are going to look the same. So if Bradley Beal and Trae Young do end up being incredibly popular, well, you have a lot of other really good players on the slate that any given day. See, that's the thing. You try not to overreact to a really good spot for Trae Young or Bradley Beal or any of these guys, right? Because Giannis in any matchup on any given night can go for 72, 70, TOO.
Right.
I'm not that specific.
72.3.
So can LeBron James though. So if they're going to be very popular on a 10-game slate, you have to look at this and say, all right, well, why is Giannis, and we don't have ownership yet, but why is Giannis not getting nearly as much ownership? Just because this matchup's so good for Beal and Trae Young, I'll happily pivot to like high range to Giannis and Antetokounmpo in a spot like that. But I love those guys for sure.
Makes a ton of sense. And we'll obviously have ownership projections over at Osmo.com, available for Osmo Premium Plus members. If you want to be an Osmo Premium Plus member, you can get 50% off your first week by using the promo code EARLYBIRD, the name of this podcast, one word. Get you 50% off a 1-week package for all sports or any specific sport that you want to do. Check out Osmo.com for more information there. Now, Shooting Guard offers us other options, obviously. One, just because there are more players in the position, but some decent matchups for the likes of a Jimmy Butler at 7,900. You have CJ McCollum against Phoenix is at 8,200. And then you get into an intriguing, I think, mid-tier where you have Dinwiddie, DeRozan, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander against the Knicks, and then Karis LeVert, who at 7K has been one of the more dynamic players over the past 2 weeks or so, has had some dips at times. And then you get into Malik Beasley, one of the few guys in Minnesota who's shooting along with D'Angelo Russell. So Shooting Guard has some other pieces here to offer. Want to get your take here quickly on Jimmy Butler. Is he taking enough shots for you at 7,900 to give you enough upside, or is he just sort of playing his game that's a little bit under the radar and maybe not as DFS viable as we might like?
Yeah, I mean, he's fine, but I just keep coming back to the idea that, this is a slate where I feel like stars and scrubs makes a ton of sense. And, maybe that changes and maybe the value isn't going to be there. If that's the case, then Jimmy Butler, sure, against New Orleans, it's a great pace up spot from New Orleans, not playing as fast with Zion, but they're still, it's still a fast-paced team. Their defense has been a little bit better. Not yesterday, by the way. I couldn't believe how easily Luka and them were getting into the paint. He's a stud, but not just him. I mean, Porzingis would just walk himself into the paint, no problem. Some really just surprising stuff. And you've been seeing a lot of that lately. I don't know. Maybe teams are just slowing down and wearing out a little bit, but I digress. You're right about one thing. The field goal attempts there are a little bit concerning because, Jimmy Butler's done this before, by the way, where he kind of just takes a couple weeks off. And I'm not saying he doesn't take a couple weeks off in terms of affecting the team. He still really helps the team. But there are times where he defers way more than you would like him to. This is the same in Minnesota. Well, there's obvious reasons for that, but the same in Chicago, the same in Philly. We've seen a lot of that. So I don't know. Maybe hopefully it'll turn around. It probably will. He's fine here. The total on this game, do we have one yet? It is 235.5. So we got a lot of high totals. It's a big pace up spot. Yeah, I don't mind it, but I wouldn't put him as a priority right now just because I'm probably looking to get to some top tier guys. Like I said, Devin Booker, I think will be pretty tough to get to as well. Terrence Ross, man, the price on him is crazy. The other day, I don't know if you saw this, but the last game they played against Miami, they dropped it by 3 points. He had 35 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 blocks, 0 steals. That's pretty incredible. He was 8 for 10
in 34 minutes. Yeah.
8 for 10 from 3, played 34 minutes. He's now played 33 plus minutes in 3 of his last 4 games.
How do you not like fall into a rebound? Like fall into the ball, just
crazy.
like
it's
ending up in your hands.
And I know it sounds even more crazy to say this, but I almost have interest if he's going to go completely neglected. And I don't know if he will. He's going to play 33 minutes against Minnesota. It's not the craziest idea to say, hey, you know what? He's not a good peripheral guy, but he's not coming up with 0 and 0 again. And they're just letting him shoot.
I'll say Marcus Smart is probably going to be pretty popular on this slate at 6,500 against Utah with Jaylen Brown out. You'll probably hear his name mentioned a decent amount, maybe a price point that not a ton love, but down from 7,300, which I think is his high watermark on the year for Smart. So he's at 65 against Utah. And then you do have the likes of Seth Curry. If Doncic is out and Tim Hardaway Jr. is out, then you have him at 5,700. Not seeing much else at the cheap end of shooting guard that seems worthwhile. I don't know if you have anybody here. Brunson's still after Dallas.
Bridges will play a lot of minutes. What he'll do with those minutes is yet to be seen, but he's going to play a ton against Portland. And that's another game that we don't have a total in yet, but I would put it around 233 or so. You know, this is going to be a incredibly high scoring night now that we dig into it a little bit more. DeAnthony Melton probably gets 25, 26 minutes against Dallas. Not in love with that. It's gonna push you back up to Bradley Beal for sure.
Let's continue talking about Beal a little bit. He's small forward.
Dinwiddie. Sorry, you mentioned this. I must have missed it. I heard you mention his name. I didn't hear you mention his price. But Dinwiddie down to 7,300. Yep. Yeah. Okay. I can get on board with that. Last game he only played 27 minutes. He shot terribly. 1 for 9.
Yeah, the blowout. Yeah.
Yeah, he had that solid 4.4 rebound, 4 assist game. But the argument I'd been mostly making was, hey, as long as he's going to be way more expensive, or like at least more expensive than Karis LeVert, up in that 8K range, I'm not really interested. But Karis LeVert also shooting guard eligible. Dan, he's down to 7,000, so his price continues to drop. San Antonio defensively is not the same team they were, not even close. Both of those guys, I don't want them in the same lineup. They cannibalize each other just enough in terms of usage and assists to where I'd play one of them and not the other, and I would set groups on that. I might not say. It's tough to say. No, on this slate with how expensive or how good all the expensive guys are, I probably would. But LeVert's down to 7K too. He's coming off, a couple ugly games. Well, 3 of his last 4 haven't been great, but he's dropped 60 spots in 2 of his last 5. So the upside is there. He leads the team in usage and per minute production, and is second in assists since Irving went down on the 1st of February.
Let's check in with small forward next, where we do have LeBron, Brad Beal. Tatum is at 10K. Then we go to Ingram, Butler, and we move on. So let's take the 3 of them because Beal is small forward eligible. I haven't looked at other sites to see where Beal is eligible. I assume it's shooting guard. But of these 3, 10-9, 10-4, and 10K, Tatum, Kemba Walker is back, right? He's been playing the past 2.
Well, yeah, he was back, and then he was out because they were on a second of a back-to-back. So he's good to go. He's healthy, yeah.
Right. So he'll play here. Jaylen Brown is out. Gordon Hayward is out. Tatum clearly has become more and more a focal point of this Boston Celtics offense. He is up to 10K. A matchup with Utah, not necessarily as daunting as it might have been in the past. LeBron gets the matchup with Milwaukee. We don't have a line on that one yet, right? No, we do. 223 is what I'm seeing. Well, I'm seeing 223 and 227. That's a disparate 2 different books there. That's impressive. So 227 on the high end, 223 on the low end.
I got it at 228.
Okay. So let's go 227, 228 as our high watermark for that matchup.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you got to jump on these lines on DraftKings and FanDuel if you're allowed to play in those slates or in those states, in your state. You just have to do it. If you can get a good read on which way the line, it doesn't always work. I told you, I got Denver -7. They won by 2. I had and they moved to it closed at -10. I got the Lakers at -6, closed at -12. I would do that on not 100 times out of 100, even if it lost 99 times in a row. It sounds crazy. You know what I mean, though? Like with how little of an edge there is there, when you can get 3 or 4 or 5 points in your direction, you got to do it. So if you can play on those states, take my word for it. Check that out each night. You have to have a good read on which way they're going to move. But when you nail them, it's nice. And you know what? If you don't, and you're a little short on cash, you don't feel comfortable, it moves the opposite direction, there's always that cash out option before the game starts.
There you go.
Wouldn't recommend it, but
right. Hey, to each his own, as the saying goes. Let's talk the rest of us small forward there. So LeBron, Beal, Tatum, any strong take here comparing those three against one another?
Utah's defense has been really up and down, unpredictable. I'm not necessarily sure what to make of them. And Jason Tatum's been spectacular. He wasn't expected to play last game. They were expected to be without their entire starting lineup, not including Daniel Tice. He plays, and there he goes again, 40 minutes, 59 fantasy points. He just gets it done. And I mean, he is evolving into one of the best players in the league. But I will throw it back to you. With Tatum here at $10,000, using DraftKings pricing for the early bird today, just for sake of time, would you rather have Jaylen Brown, or where would you rank? You don't have to rank them all, but where would you put him among Doncic, Giannis, LeBron, Beal, him, and Trae Young?
Price point considered, I go Tatum's probably towards the end.
Okay.
I think he's taking a decent amount of shots, the same as Beal. He's up in 22, 20, 27, 24, just quickly looking, box score surfing. But this game, I assume, will be a 218, a 216 over under, right? I
don't imagine it's going to be very high.
So I'm going to take game. I'm going to take pace. I'm going to take matchup and say that Beal is higher for me. You know what? I might put Tatum ahead of LeBron and save the 900. I don't know about this matchup with Milwaukee. I don't know what to make of Giannis and LeBron in this matchup where two teams are so good that this feels like there could be more defense than people are expecting. But
this Utah game, I'm expecting it to come down to the wire. I really do.
I would agree with that.
But Utah just has not been themselves lately. I've unfortunately been exposed to a lot of Utah Jazz games recently. And, I've seen a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same issues. And is it going to continue? I wish I knew the answer to that, but I don't. Here's what I do know. I do have the stats, and they're bottom 5 in defensive ratings since the beginning of February. How about that? They're also top 5 in offensive rating since the beginning of February. What's that mean? Makes that even though they're playing at a bit of a slower pace than most teams, they are also making for a better fantasy matchup because that defense has struggled so much.
All right. What do you got for small forward, though? Where do you feel it pulling you the most?
If Tatum is completely overlooked, I'm willing to get there. But right now, I don't think that's going to be happening, at least not right now. I don't see myself getting to LeBron here. We'll get to Giannis in a moment. Bradley Beal's eligible at small forward. That makes it pretty interesting. Brandon Ingram's price is climbing, so that's kind of tough. DeMar DeRozan, 7,200. I know he's underwhelmed without Aldridge. Aldridge is out again, so he's fine there. I like LeVert at 7K against the Spurs. I think that's a pretty favorable spot that is well worth exploiting. Danilo Gallinari, 6,100 against the Knicks is kind of always just your safe option there. He's not going to do great for you, but he's also not going to destroy you. And then I think we have to touch on Dario Saric, who probably gets some extra run. Ayton, I watched that injury as it happened. It did not look great. He's doubtful. He was writhing in pain. So he's already doubtful to play. And if that's the case, the options you have are Diallo and you have Baines, and I don't know which one of them is going to get the bulk of the run, but you're also dealing with a situation where Cameron Johnson is already ruled out with an illness. So does Dario Saric play 28, 29 minutes, maybe 30? I think that's possible. He's okay here against the bad Portland defense.
He did play at the 5 with Ayton out, right? That was the lineup they went to.
I think Baines was out as well.
Okay.
At least one of those games, Baines or Cameron Johnson. I can't remember what it was, but I know that they were more shorthanded than they were now. Let me pull this up. Go ahead if you want to introduce power forward or get in any value here. I'm going to just pull up the game flow from this last game and see what happened. I remember watching it. I don't remember who came in for him, and it was close till the end. So that should give us all we need to know.
123, 114 last game, Toronto and Phoenix.
So Saric actually came in. Saric, so they closed with Booker, Bridges, Rubio.
Cam Johnson was out there.
Johnson and Saric. Interesting. Now, again, was Aaron Baines...
He didn't play.
No, but the question is, he didn't play, but the question is, was he a DNP-CD or was he injured? And my guess is that he was a DNP-CD, but I've got it right here and I can tell you, cause that'll tell you a lot. If he just didn't play because Monty Williams didn't want to give him minutes, well then, that makes things a bit more interesting. Aaron Baines was active, did not play coach's decision. There you go. So right. Dario Saric could play 30 minutes here.
And he's small forward, power forward eligible, which allows us to transition.
But let me just preface this with, that was in a game where Toronto.
Yep.
You see where I'm going here. That was in a game where Toronto started Pascal Siakam at the 5.
Right.
And Rondae Hollis-Jefferson had played some. Siakam played 44 minutes, which is just nuts. He played all but 1 minute in the first half, all but 2 minutes throughout the first 3 quarters. So you had him at the center at the 5 for a good amount. Boucher played a good amount. He was at the 5. So now you're going up against Hassan Whiteside. That could force Williams' hand into starting Aaron Baines. Keep an eye out for that. Would not surprise me at all if that's the case. Aaron Baines is the bare minimum. So we've seen guys go from DNP-CD to getting 20-plus minutes. We saw Cody Zeller do it just the other day and today. Aaron Baines could end up actually being the value play here from the Suns.
Yeah, Whiteside has been playing pretty well of late as well. So it's not a walk in the park there for the Suns, and not that the matchup necessarily for the Suns is a good one no matter what. But Whiteside would make a ton of sense for Baines to at least have the body in there for 18 to 22 minutes on this game. Power forward is up next, and looking at FanDuel and DK, you have Giannis eligible at small forward over on FanDuel, power forward eligible on DK. He's 11-2 on DraftKings along with Tatum at 10. Anthony Davis has that Q tag. I assume he's playing here. I don't see him sitting out this matchup with the Bucks after playing last time out. I see him at 9-8, always 10K or below for Davis. Seems at least somewhat intriguing. But the guy who stands out here really for me at power forward is Domantas Sabonis at 8,700. 2 games in a row, somewhat underwhelming, still giving you a double-double, but this matchup with the Chicago Bulls just seems like a plus matchup for him. What do you think of some of the top matchups at power forward?
Yeah, Saric, we already talked about him just from a value standpoint. Get that out of the way early. All right, so the top guy right now, and I don't think he's going to be popular. I could be completely wrong here. Things change. Lakers are 1-point favorites in what should be a very, very, very entertaining basketball game to watch, just from a fan's perspective. But is there anything better than getting Giannis Antetokounmpo in competitive games where Mike Budenholzer might run him out there for 38 minutes? That sounds crazy, right? 38 minutes, not going to happen. Sure, I get that. But we saw not long ago, Giannis against Toronto in a game that they won in regulation, played 38 minutes, Dan, in a good game, a close game against a good team. Well, can it happen here? Not going to project him for that, but I can promise you this much. I'll be projecting him more for the 31 that I usually do. I'll probably give him 34 minutes in this game because the only way I think that Giannis doesn't get that much run is if it doesn't stay close. Truly think he's going to play huge minutes here. So think of it this way. I'll keep it very simple. All of that was a long way of saying this. On the season, this guy averages 1.97 DraftKings points per minute. If he comes out and plays 36 minutes, let's just say maybe he plays 36 minutes or 35 minutes. 36 minutes, you're averaging around 71 fantasy points. 34 minutes is 67.
Right.
I know it's a tough matchup, but put this man on the court and he's going to do work. And maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe his ownership's way higher, but with Trey and Beal and a few other really appealing matchups, I wouldn't be surprised to see him be lesser owned than usual.
Well, right. Yeah. So lesser owned than usual, sub 12%, right? I think is more than reasonable to say here for Giannis. I think is a projection that I don't think it's too bold because the other players in plus matchups at cheaper price points who I think are going to garner some of the higher ownership here. Giannis may go overlooked. And to your point, if you're projecting this game to be a pick 'em or -2, whatever it may be when all is said and done, depending on where the line settles, seeing -2, pick 'em, -1, pick 'em, like depending on the site you're looking at. If it stays tight between LeBron and Giannis, it seems like there's going to be a ton to really like. I mentioned Sabonis. You have Aaron Gordon, John Collins, the likes of Julius Randle against Oklahoma City. Zion gets a matchup with Miami. Who else do you like at power forward?
The more and more I look at it, the more I think I'm just going to have a lot of Giannis Antetokounmpo. You mentioned Anthony Davis. Man, he played a phenomenal game against the 76ers. Just really, really impressive game. He's basically the reason they won that game because he did everything. He's 9,800. He'll definitely fly under the radar. And I think probably somebody that I'm not going to get to very much for the same reasons we've talked about throughout the entire show. Tatum, similarly. Domantas Sabonis, this price is getting a little bit sketchy for me. He's really good. I mean, he's a really good player. But still, how are you paying 87, close to 9K for him on a slate where so many other guys are underpriced or just in super favorable positions in really good matchups, equally appealing matchups with higher totals and higher implied totals? So that's where I'm at there. Zion has dropped to 7,600, probably a matchup thing. DraftKings preemptively prices these guys down a lot. And nobody can defend him because he's so big. So it kind of almost doesn't matter what the matchup is. Some teams are going to give him a little trouble. Last game against Dallas, he admitted that he was, his first second of a back-to-back since entering the NBA. So that's clearly an issue, but he turned it around later. And figured things out. He's a pretty appealing play here at a mid 7K price point. I don't mind getting to that.
All right. Any cheap options here, power forward? We've already talked Sarge, probably more than even he deserves. But what do we got between the likes of Carmelo and Otto Porter Jr. You have the likes of James Johnson, who's been getting some solid minutes in the low 20s for Minnesota. Anybody from the cheap end of the pool that worth mentioning along with Dario Saric?
Not really, no. A lot of the value right now is speculative, and we would just be wasting a lot of time getting into it. Taurean Prince probably plays close to 30 minutes or 28 minutes. I guess he's okay. There's not a lot of great value right now. No.
All right. Let's close it out with some center talk. Don't forget, you can always find more information over at awesemo.com. Use that promo code EARLYBIRD, 50% off of a weekly Awesemo Premium Plus package. Also, SuperDraft, use that promo code Awesemo. Gets you $20 on your $100 deposit. SuperDraft is changing the DFS game. They have that multiplier. If you haven't checked them out yet, do it. It's a different way to take on daily fantasy sports and allows you to really build a lineup that is a little bit more of a dream team, but the construction and understanding how the multiplier will work on any given slate is a fun way to go about it. And what Awesemo is doing with our live shows, which are free over on YouTube, by the way, if you're on YouTube, like, comment, all those fun things, subscribe to this channel. It does help with SEO and with pushing us to the top. Also, if you're listening on iTunes or Stitcher, leave a comment. Leave a rating. It helps push us up the charts over there for more people to listen. But what we've been doing is staying on a little longer on our live shows because SuperDraft's locks are different than the typical DraftKings and FanDuel sites. So check out our schedule and make sure you know how long we're going on live before lock, because lock is different over there on superdraft.io. Center, if Luka is out, do you play Porzingis? Is that a lockup game against Memphis?
At that price, it gets a little bit sketchy.
A little hairy, yeah.
Not to mention the should we be buying into the Memphis Grizzlies defensively being better?
The Grindhouse.
That's a great name for a stadium, by the way. I mean, phenomenal. Not sure it's been the Grindhouse for a while, but you're paying a premium for Porzingis. I'll tell you though, it's probably still worth it. Let me put it to you this way: I'd rather $9,300 Porzingis over $9,800 Anthony Davis if Doncic sits. Just to kind of put it in perspective a little bit, I'd prefer him over a $9,100 Hassan Whiteside, who's still played very well, very solid, over Vooch. Vooch is $8,900. I like Vooch, by the way, just to get that out there. But yeah, if Doncic sits, I'm not necessarily sure how we can't be talking about Kristaps Porzingis, even at that price, being one of the better plays on this slate overall. Because we've seen what he's done with Doncic off the court this year. It's just been remarkable. Not only that, with Doncic on the floor lately, he's been excellent.
Yeah.
But on the season, without Luka Doncic this season, Porzingis is a 1.4 for DraftKings point per minute guy, 30% usage. And my expectations are that only begins to climb because he wasn't exactly he was working his way back from a major injury. He's been a totally different player. And 1.52 fantasy points per minute, 32.2% usage, 17% rebounds with Doncic off since the start of February. Let's also keep in mind, I say this a lot, but Luka Doncic is the team's, I don't know if he still is, I could look it up, but he's the team's leading usage guy. You know, he's the leading facilitator, leading playmaker, right? Leads the team in assists. And my guess is he probably still leads the team in rebounding. So taking him off the floor doesn't just help from a usage standpoint. It helps everywhere, right? So he is, 9.5 rebounds per game, 9.4 for Kristaps Porzingis. Hey, think about how much that affects him, not just from a shooting standpoint. It's crazy.
Yeah, there's so much to go around there for Kristaps. If in fact Doncic is off the floor, you get an uptick in fantasy points per minute. Obviously, from what Dave all said, that makes perfect sense that you continue to get an uptick for him. But that is all if Doncic is out. Now, Porzingis has been playing better with, as Dave described, with Doncic of late, playing the 5 exclusively for the Mavericks, has really seemed to blossom into that role for Dallas. But I would probably pause a little bit more if Doncic is in the lineup simply because of a little bit of downside at 9,300. What else do you like at center? You mentioned some of the other names that you're comparing him to. Vooch, Whiteside is 9,100. You have Bam Adebayo, who's had one of the best seasons, probably up for most improved player in the NBA on the year. He's at 8,200. Who else do you like at center as we scroll through?
All right. So I already mentioned Vooch is pretty appealing. I do prefer him over Hassan Whiteside, but this is a very deep position. Let's be clear. There are a lot of options to touch on here. And we already talked about Porzingis at length. Those two, Vooch and Porzingis, assuming Doncic is out, obviously, would be the two players up top that I'm most interested in. We don't need to go through every single player here. You mentioned Bam Adebayo. Probably a little bit more difficult to get there, but I get it against New Orleans. If no one's talking about him, it's understandable. But Aaron Baines, Dan, you have to assume that he's going to get minutes here. I right now have him starting. Okay, I think Aaron Baines starts this game if DeAndre Ayton, who's doubtful, doesn't play, and if that's the case, he becomes the best value play on the slate. It's pretty clear cut. I would put him as the top value player on the slate. I also really like McConnell. We talked about that, assuming Brogdon's out and hopefully Oladipo. But Aaron Baines is a +1 per minute guy on the season. And now you potentially get between 24 to 28 minutes from him with upside for potentially 30. I don't know. Ayton's been playing such huge minutes that there's a lot to soak up here. Dwayne Dedmon's also very cheap. Can he get 24, 25 minutes?
Yeah, Washington and Atlanta. I wanted to get your take on that before we closed out.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Dwayne Dedmon, he is expected to play. Do we get 25 minutes from him? It's very the last game he played was the 24th, I think. Yeah, the 24th of February against the 76ers. So he comes into this one, gets the start, and then listen. So one foul, he's out, comes back, picks up another foul, picks up his third foul in the second quarter, plays only 19 seconds, and then comes in, grabs his fourth foul to start the third quarter. And then, never got it together in that one. He played 14 minutes in the game. That wasn't the injury. That was just massive, massive foul trouble. That's all to say that he would have been getting more minutes. There was, and then he caught his fifth foul right when he came back in the fourth, and it was over from there. He was, before the injury and before the foul trouble, which he got in 3 or 4 consecutive games, actually playing solid minutes. So if you're going to project him for 25 to 27 minutes, it's tough to say, but if you're going to, and he returns, well then, Dwayne Dedmon at that price point, near minimum salary, becomes mighty interesting.
All right. Lot to consider here. Lots to consider for the NBA strategy show on Friday morning. That gets you started for the day along with his early bird. You do get Josh's contenders video as well early on. I think Josh wakes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning at this point. I'm not really sure what's happening, but
you think what?
I think Josh wakes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's out of control. He's waking up before we go to bed.
I
mean, it's like getting lapped.
Right. Exactly right.
Do cars still lap cars in NASCAR? Like, is that a thing?
Yeah, that happens still.
Is that a thing? I don't know a thing about NASCAR. He's basically lapping us on the sleep cycle.
I will say I've heard there's some shaving happening for Josh.
Oh yes, sir. It is. It's going to be great. He already did it. He went and got pampered, as he likes to say, at a barber shop. They did the thing, a face shave, all that good stuff. He was producing the Deeper Dive on Thursday, and he had his camera off. He doesn't want me to see it until tomorrow, which I love. I love the suspense. I want to be just as surprised as the viewers are,
Yep.
But I walked away from the camera so he could show Adam, and Adam said he looks like if your college has a hockey team, he looks like the guy on the team that you immediately know is the biggest douchebag in the school.
So in high school, he played, lacrosse and hockey and maybe some disc golf in his spare time.
Right.
And got it. Okay.
But here, let's be fair. If that's the worst thing he looks like with a mustache in 2020,
that's
he
fair.
should be thanking his lucky stars.
He needs to get some transition lenses in glasses so that they are not, so he looks, never mind. Nonetheless,
we're not going to have him buy a windowless van either.
Exactly. Free candy, man.
I was going to say, go out, see if, you can get that early Halloween candy.
Exactly. Come on. It's a win-win for everybody.
No, it's absolutely not.
I have to check that box that says that this video is not for children over on YouTube by the time this is done. Exactly. So that's fine. I have to do it every time. Nonetheless, don't forget, find Dave on the Twitter machine at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D. You find him on Sirius XM, Sirius 210, XM87. That is Saturday and Sunday, 3 to 5 p.m. Find me at Dan Strafford at Osmo_com is our website. Osmo NBA as well if you want the giveaways for NBA specifically. Osmo MLB. I don't know if we've hit it yet, but I know they were saying if they hit 3,000 before opening day follows over there, they'd have a giveaway as well. So check that out.
For which one?
For Osmo MLB.
Oh, okay.
On Twitter. We're bringing on more new writers, new contributors. Check them out.
Contributors.
MMA show.
Can I say those guys? Pete actually DM'd me one day and we just got to talking about it. I'm really glad he did because him and Jason, I think Jason Lloyd, those guys did a phenomenal job, man. Like I'm not saying this just because, they're new to the Osmo rotation and its promotion. I'm serious about this. Because if I didn't think it was good, I just wouldn't say anything at all.
Right.
You know me.
Note to everyone else at Osmo.
Exactly. But I think from everything I've seen, it's the best content out there for MMA.
Yeah, no,
I was really good.
I am not an MMA follower. Like I'm not somebody who necessarily gets into playing DFS.
I've gotten huge into boxing lately, man. I'm just huge into it again. I love it.
Are you looking forward to Fury's next the third?
And Anthony Joshua?
Yeah.
We're talking about another fight with Deontay Wilder, but I feel like
Wilder executed his right to
the rematch. I don't know how I feel about it, man. Like I don't think he stands a chance. I think this is a pride thing. You know, they'll let me go down on my shield, carry me.
They did. They threw in the towel on him.
Go out on my shield. Yeah, it's fine. And I get that. But at the same time, you didn't stand a chance. And I know his ear was squirting blood and everything, but he'd have to, it feels like he would have to, and I watched that fight in its entirety. It feels like he would have to completely change everything about what he does. Fury's game plan was the best you've seen in a while. And I'd like to see him against Joshua.
I like Fury a lot just as a human being. I don't know if you saw him on the Rich Eisen show talking about his depression, his anxiety, and all.
Wasn't
those
he a big
things.
Drinker too?
Yeah, there's just.
I like the guy. You know what I love most? You're gonna think this is wild, but I'm a huge fan of like sincere, authentic sportsmanship.
Of course.
And some people don't give a shit about that. I like it. And there was, if you ever watch Mike Tyson, known as a crazy guy, bit the ear and all that good stuff. Every time he knocked someone out, after the count, he rushed over to them to see if they were okay and to help them up every single time. And Fury strikes me as a similar guy in that, he'll beat the piss out of you.
It's
in the
a sport
ring.
For him. Not
exactly. But afterwards, he is going to, come up to you and tell you you're a champ and tell you you're going to have the belt again, which is what he did to Wilder. I really respect that.
Yeah. I'm not a huge boxing fan at this point, but I do like Fury, and I did watch a decent amount of that fight after the fact. I didn't watch it live, but did watch it just because I'm fascinated by Fury and Wilder just as a matchup. So I thought boxing, the heavyweight class may have some life to it yet. But I will say the MMA show from Osmo impressed me, and that's from a broadcasting perspective. I just thought it was a really well done show, and those guys really know their stuff and how they bring it to your attention. You can check that out on YouTube. Check all of our shows out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, hit that alarm bell. Make sure you're aware of all our shows. Strategy show first thing. Then you have Live Before Lock is our last show. In between, you have the Deeper Dive. That's at 5 p.m. Adam and Laufey. And there's a mustache reveal at some point in the not too distant
Very exciting.
Future. So tune in for all that and more right here on Osmo.com. We're back Monday morning right here with the DFS Early Bird presented by Osmo.com.